Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
And welcome in, everyone, to another edition of the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krause. We thank everyone for being with us here today, J-Doc. Full 1 hour show. Set the table for the audience. Got a great lineup, or two great guests, rather, and a lot of good conversation ahead here on the Labor and Energy Show.
Yeah, Joe, if you want to see emotion, okay, first of all, this is going to be a great show. It's an AFPM special discussion on the Climate Superfund lawsuits. And I got to tell you, I've been up half the night drinking coffee and studying and researching the damn Climate Superfund lawsuits and organized extortion, okay, and what is going on in this situation. You and I have done a lot of injury. You just saw Pond Lehocky up on the first commercial going in, okay. Anybody who's ever heard us do injury radio will tell you they've heard about the contingency fee agreement. And the contingency fee agreement is created for individuals that might get injured on a job or some at the negligence of somebody else if it's a personal injury, and they can't afford a lawyer. Okay, so they'll go to either personal injury or workers' compensation if they have a situation. They don't have to pay out of pocket. What happens is that those types of firms work on a contingency fee agreement, okay, which means they'll represent your case for free, and if you win, they get their money on the back end, and they invest in the case and all those. If they lose, you don't have to pay it all. Well, let me tell you something. These Climate Superfund lawsuits, okay, that are being thrown at our traditional energy companies, okay, retroactive by law firms, and there's one in particular that they go. I don't know the exact process, but I'll give you an example, hypothetical. Walk into a town, a municipality, a state. They offer a contingency fee agreement. The state pays nothing. There's damages that they find, okay, or create. Okay, and at the end of the day, they cut a contingency fee agreement with the township or the state where they want to go in, prove that there's damages there, and then fine the traditional energy companies in a submission. Okay, the townships or the states don't have to pay a damn thing. Now, they're not individuals, little people who got injured on the job who can't afford an attorney. Okay, and then the big crux is, oh, and by the way, if we lose, Mr. City or Mr. State, you don't have to pay a damn thing. Okay, that's exactly the way a contingency fee works with a person who's injured who couldn't afford an attorney. Man, what a scam, bro. I've never seen anything like it. And of course, we've got a couple great guests, Don Thorne, Vice President, State and Local Outreach, AFPM, and Aaron Rengel, VP Government Relations, AFPM. Man, I can't wait to talk to these guys. For it not for the AFPM, okay, there's a lot going on in New Jersey and around the country, okay? These lawsuits, they're fighting with their last breath. And what happens, Joe? We lose these companies and these refineries, okay? The jobs that our labor community loses, unprecedented. The revenues that come into our communities, unprecedented. What happens to the money? It builds infrastructure projects or whatever they need, where a state or whatever the municipality has a shortfall. Okay, it's absolutely a disgrace, and they're putting our traditional energy companies and organizations and industry and our workers out of business, and if they could get their way. Because they got a formula now. Will it trickle down big time onto the general public? Won't trickle down. It'll splash on them like a tidal wave.
Let's get right started to it for the benefit of those listening to the Labor and Energy Show today with J-Doc and Krause. We'll have two segments with our special guest today. We'll pause in between both for a short 30-second timeout, but you'll get a full envelope of the show today. And of course, if you missed the show, you want to re-listen to the show, you can go to Apple or Spotify and you can search the Labor and Energy Show. It sounds like one of those topics where if I'm consuming it, if I'm the public, J-Doc, and I'm listening, I'm not going to get everything that's being said within the first rack. So I may want to go back and listen to it. We'll put it up on Apple and Spotify. We'll take a 30-second break. When we come back on the other side, our guest will join us, J-Doc and Krause. This is the Labor Show. We're back in 30. If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let Jacob Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call Jacob Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show on the Jacob Media Network. We've got a great show. Can't wait to introduce our guests. This is an AFPM special. The Climate Superfund lawsuits, weaponizing the law to put traditional energy out of business, cost us jobs, use the funds to fund projects and other whatever that industry that municipalities and state shortfalls have been created. And I want to bring in Don Thorin, Vice President State and Local Outreach of the AFPM, and Aaron Ringel, VP Government Relations AFPM. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Oh, pleasure to be here. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Let's start off. Don, tell our listeners a little bit about your role, with the AFPM, and then Aaron, if you'll do the same.
Sure. So I manage the state relations component here at AFPM. There's 5 of us that have to cover basically 50 states. We do work with our partners on the West Coast out in Wistful, but it's a pretty big job. There's 6,800 legislators out there. Legislative sessions move a lot quicker than things do at the federal level, particularly up and around New England, New Jersey. You can have a bad idea at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it could be law at 5 o'clock that night. In places like Rhode Island, where there's not a ton of expertise on some of these issues, there's no refining capability up there. They don't understand the industry. And that's a lot of our job. Is we're actually just sort of educating legislators. Here's how the fuel supply chain works. Here's how a refinery works. Here's how it gets to you and your local gas station. Because most legislators don't even understand that basic part. And now they're out there, trying to pass these laws about pushing back on climate change and pushing back, and getting our companies to sort of pay for damages that they can't even define themselves. And it's just, there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of heavy technical issues involved. And we're trying to work with folks who, again, don't really even understand how the fuel gets to their local gas station.
No question. Aaron, if you will.
No, absolutely. Aaron Ringel, I'm Vice President Federal Government Relations at AFPM. My job, similar to Don's, is 435 members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike, including every political appointee, career official within the administration and every cabinet. We handle outreach and advocacy, and to Don's point, a significant part of that is education. You see it just as well on the federal side as you do on the state side, educating folks on the unintended consequences of legislation and regulations. A lot of concepts start as good ideas with good intent, but end up spiraling out of control. And we've seen that here in Washington, D.C. a number of times, and we need to get out there and educate folks on what it means to consumers, to producers here in the United States when members choose to take these actions.
So it's amazing. My great friend Brendan Williams, and I know you guys all know Brendan. I always tease him about how smart he is, right? You guys, I don't know who's doing your HR, but you got to start looking for community college dropouts. I'll tell you why. Because
Syracuse expats.
well, the reason I say this is, and I'm only half joking, because you guys are educating politicians that don't know what the hell they're talking about, right? Okay. Imagine we start doing this labor and energy show, Joe Krause and I, and we realize that so many people have no idea what the RFS is, what of course the Climate Superfund lawsuits are, okay? And so there's a gap, there's a gap between the lingo. And look, it's a natural situation. You have legislative issues, you have technical, you're dealing with all kinds of technology and all this, and all the way to the pump, right? And so there's a lot of layers, but I started, and I don't know if you got a chance to hear the conversation I had. I spoke to Adrian this morning. I called Brendan at 10:40 last night. I woke him up out of bed because I'm reading about this stuff and I'm losing my mind, right? Because I know regular folks don't know what this, and I call weaponizing the law, organized extortion. Is that what it is? And talk about our workforce and labor, right? And, union, non-union, these jobs, if they get their way with this great formula, law firm that is going around and partnering with municipalities and states with the contingency fee agreement. I mean, that means that the states, the people who are listening, they don't have to pay for anything. And if they lose, and this, by the way, is what the law firm is telling them, if we lose, you don't pay a dime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and some of these lawsuits, you look at it, and even if they're not on a contingency fee, if it's the state suing, what's it to them to spend a couple $1 million when the upside is $80 billion?
100%. It's ridiculous. And guys, what is to our listeners? Remind our listeners about the AFPM, what you guys do, and who your members are.
All right. So our members are the refineries out there, right? 140 or so refineries throughout the country, and then the petrochemical plants and suppliers to those refineries and those petchem plants. They're all different membership categories that we have, but it's the whole sort of community who takes the oil and makes it into viable products that consumers use every day. That's who we're representing here. It is a very unique industry, being in the midstream part where we're affected by what goes up upstream, we're affected by what happens downstream. We've got to watch both sides of the equation. So it's complicated, and it's a complicated industry, and it's a complicated business. A refinery is, you guys know, that's not a place to mess around. Mm-hmm. And folks just don't understand that. And they just don't understand how the fuel supply system works. And
that's what they all think, though, Don. They all think the refineries are unlimited cash, right? We could just go, those are the people behind the wall. And when we're going to milk somebody and weaponize the law, okay, and create standards. By the way, these super funds are fine. These lawsuits, they're fining companies, that exist today that maybe didn't even own that property 30 years ago, mm-hmm. Because there's such deep pockets. That mentality, okay. And what happens is people lose jobs, but they don't see the refinery that was there, because you can't really conceptualize what's no longer there or what project isn't there. You're driving through, you see an empty lot, and you just keep going, okay, to the unemployment line. So your point is well made. Talk about the priorities, Aaron, if you'll jump in, about the top policy priorities for the AFPM.
Absolutely, and our priorities are based around ensuring that American consumers have access to fuels at an affordable price to boost our economy, to make sure that the mom and dad can take the kids to work and have the ability to have a vehicle that meets their needs. We're about consumer choice and we're about consumer affordability. We're opposed to policies that raise the cost of fuel for American families and American producers. We're opposed to policies that penalize us for providing a fuel that drives American exceptionalism, that drives our ability to outcompete everybody else in the entire world. But that's what we're going down towards right now with these Climate Superfund bills and these Climate Superfund programs and the lawsuits. This is, to your point earlier, this is retroactive. They're saying, you know what, we're gonna assess a fee on you in, I believe it's New York, for instance, of $80 billion for the last 20 years. And, you know, this is all retroactive. We're just going to pull a number out of thin air and we're choose 20 years as our time limit because we look at our budget and our budget looks a little red because we've been going crazy with the spending and we want to invest in infrastructure. And I'll use air quotes, infrastructure, because as soon as that money hits their account, they're going to do whatever they want with it. And if you trust your state legislator with $80 billion to spend it on what they say they're going to spend it on, I got a bridge to sell you.
No question about it. And, you know, but my theory is this: as soon as they suck the money out, right, wherever I see, I'm mad. I don't care what they do with it. Okay, I could care. The fact that they took it and stole that money. Now my people are out of jobs. Okay, soon these tax bases are all. You know, we're losing that now. The United States of America, who has the highest standards, okay, what refinery standards and traditional energy, is now putting our energy, traditional energy, at such risk. Okay, we're going to be then at the mercy of our overseas adversaries. Okay, then what are you going to do?
And that $80 billion that I mentioned, they think that it's going to come out of thin air and that, you know, people aren't going to pay for that.
Yeah.
There is a cost to everything. You take $80 billion out of the refining and petchem industry and oil and gas producers, there's going to be no investment in existing upkeep in properties. That is going to mean fewer jobs. And that's going to mean higher fuel prices. For all their talking points on how this will not get passed on to the consumer, there is a cost to the consumer on this. Nobody's going to take $80 billion off of their balance sheet and be like, you know, call it a day. Yeah. These are private companies.
Yeah. And it's insulting because regular people out there working hard every day, they don't have often the wherewithal to read a bill or to really dissect it or read what I read last night. So our top priority on this show, and I'll go to Don, Climate Superfund lawsuits and legislation. That's what we're talking about. Also referred to as retroactive liability. Okay, Don, I'd like you to explain what the Climate Superfund is to our listeners, and what the climate liability lawsuits are, and who is pushing them.
Right. Okay. So you've talked several times about the lawsuits, right? Remember, these firms, several of them, primarily they're down south. In fact, a lot of them are the same firms that started lawsuits against tobacco companies 30 years ago. And they venue shop, right? They go out and they look for a particular circuit, a particular state. Who's the judge there? Where are we going to get the most favorable decision? And they try to get involved there. They try to push these forward. You know, we've actually had some pretty good luck in arguing jurisdiction. All right. If you are Newark, New Jersey, how are you suing a company in state court that's headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Right. How's that going to happen? So really, that should be in federal court. So that's where we kind of are on those lawsuits. The legislation is something entirely different. The New York bill that Aaron was talking about passed at 3:00 in the morning on the very last day of session. At 3:00 the day before, it hadn't even been heard in committee. They pulled it out of committee, they raced it through the process, and they rammed it down everybody's throats at 3:00 in the morning. You know, and they just threw this magic number on it. And we're going to get this much money over 20 years. That's it. The Vermont bill, which passed, is a little different. They've got sort of they're trying to do a study on what the actual costs of climate change were in Vermont, and it's been 2 years and they're absolutely nowhere. I mean, the idea of the bill is, well, we need to start recouping money that the state has spent on damage caused by climate change.
Yeah.
So we're either going to do a study, figure out how much that was, or we're just going to make up a number. And they're doing it retroactively. Right? You're now trying to penalize somebody for selling a legal product over the last 20 or 25 or 30 years, whatever it is in each bill. And each bill is a little bit different in that regard. And, nobody's ever been penalized like that. Right. And, we can talk about things moving forward, but you're not retroactively, you're in a sticky spot there. And there are lawsuits against the Vermont legislation and against the New York legislation. Now we've got a dozen other states that are trying to pass.
Are there statutes of limitations, even if they had any credibility? I mean, typically, are they making it up as they go along?
Oh, they're making it up as they go along.
Yeah.
I mean, every bill is different. There's one in Minnesota. They want all their money in 10 years, and then they're going to do it again. It says right there in the bill. Then we'll reevaluate. We're going to do it again.
So the law firms. So I did a little research. Who's behind the lawsuits, right? They're primarily brought on by state attorney general, cities and counties, but they're represented by specialized law firms. Most notably, a company called Sher Edling. That firm alone has been involved in the majority of the U.S. climate liability cases and represents governments seeking damages from fossil fuel companies. Key dynamic to highlight the contingency fee agreement. Woo! That's a great business model, man. Just walking in, you got everything put together right there. Not going to cost you anything. If we lose, it ain't going to cost you anything. You get your money, and of course, we get our contingency fee after everything settles. And here are the imaginary damages caused by, it is, and this is an insulting issue. And then there go all the jobs out the window, and there go the revenues to the economy. And by the way, theoretically, like we said, not even theoretically, we do it better than anybody else in the world. Let somebody else take it over. Let us have to get all of our energy from over the seas. We all live under the same, ozone, right? I don't know. I'm ranting here, but am I off, guys? Am I off?
No, they do try. The New York bill specifically lists out, the 30 largest oil and gas companies in the world. Right. So they assume they're going to somehow collect checks from Saudi Aramco and Gazprom and, international companies, national companies that are part of different governments around the world. And it's just, there's not that grip in reality.
I don't think they do, though, Don. I think they just put them on the list to show that, listen, we even put them on, but they don't have any grounds,
Right.
So it's, I guess they think we're all stupid.
Well, this is the thing about these lawsuits. You look at it, for them, they can file 100 lawsuits, 50 lawsuits. Let's call it 50. Let's say they cover every state. They just have to win one of them. They have to have a 1 in 50 shot here to get something moving here. For the consumer and for the labor that's working at these refineries and for our members, we've got to bat 1,000. We got to win 100% of these. So they're playing the odds. They've got 50 shots at this, and we have to win every single one of these 50. And sometimes you ask, like, well, the concept of this is just ludicrous to begin with. This shouldn't be a problem. But jurisdiction seeking, you see what judges they can get. They're looking for anybody that'll give them the time of day to move this along.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why I bring up the contingency fee agreement, because we, like Krause and I, we do a lot of, we had an injured workers program and just to educate people. And for years, we have had personal injury or workers' compensation. You're here to Palmahaki. Okay, now companies don't like to hear that, but we're talking about individuals that sometimes, and in Philly, we just lost 3. Our last Labor and Energy Alliance meeting, and we had a lot of the AFPMers on. We just lost 3 individuals to a collapse, a garage. They were iron workers, so I'm an iron worker, so that it hit home. Went out to the job site. There's a negligent situation there. Those families don't have anything. Now they lost their. So you have the contingency fee agreement. You have it because they could otherwise not be able to, seek a recovery and maybe live the rest of their life with dignity. That's not this. Okay, these people, these law firms are, like you just said, they're going around the country. They already got their package. They already know they're walking in, and they're likely cutting deals. I'm not in the meetings. Let me see how much time we have for this segment. Because, all right, so we only have a couple minutes left for this segment. But Don, we talked about the goals, for the lawsuits and the consumers. But how in a workforce situation, okay? Obviously, if we're jeopardizing our traditional energy plants, our refineries, I mean, what is the magnitude of something like this when it comes to being harmful to our workforce?
I mean, it could be devastating, right? And we're talking about, right, we've got a number for New York State, right? But there's going to be a number for Vermont again sooner or later. California's got a bill. Oregon's got a bill. Jersey's got a bill. Minnesota's got a bill. I mean, you're starting to add this up and you're talking about billions a year per company in some cases, right? I mean, that's going to be, devastating throughout the supply chain, right? It's the refinery workers, absolutely. But throughout the entire supply chain, it's going to be devastating.
And when you talk about consumers, but also citizens, okay, you know how many when Joe Kraus and I got involved in the energy sector and a lot of things going on when the PES refinery shut down here in Philly, and I had friends of mine that worked at some of those refineries, and they were losing everything. These are 55-year-old guys that some of them did not have a parachute. Okay, it was tragic. It wasn't just those jobs, which were heartbreaking enough, because it's awesome being 50 years old and trying to retrain yourself into the workforce, but it's also the community, okay, and the jobs related to those situations. Okay, how does the general public get impacted by this? Not just pumps, at the pump and all that stuff, but a surrounding community to some of these places that may close down. Don?
Yeah, I mean, any heavy industrial facility is paying the lion's share of taxes in whatever community they were in, right? They're paying property taxes, they're paying payroll taxes. It is a lot of money generated for a local economy. I mean, you can see it happening live in California right now, right? Because there are refineries that are slowing down. There's all kinds of things going on in the energy market there in California. And even Governor Newsom is finally trying to understand this and realize what is happening and how much support every one of these facilities does for their local community, right? The employees, the local businesses that surround them, and most especially the tax base.
They considered it
devastating.
Their golden goose for the longest time until finally they killed it. And they look back and they're, well, what can we do to make you stay? Like, that conversation was meant to happen years and years ago.
Right. Yeah. You go to the ports and see, people bring, that's where the new, resources are coming in. Enjoy your new lack of newfound, freedom. Okay. You don't have anybody to harass. All right, let me just jump on this. We have a break. I want to thank everybody, obviously, for tuning in to the Labor and Energy Show on the Jacob Media Network. Our guest, it's an AFPM special, Don Thorin, VP State and Local Outreach from the AFPM, and Aaron Ringel, Vice President, Government Relations, AFPM. We'll have more after the break.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. Guys, Senators Cruz, Cotton, Bud Lee, and Lee recently introduced a bill to combat climate lawfare and defend American energy. It's called the Stop Climate Shakedowns Act. What a great name, okay? To counter the rise of climate lawfare targeting America's energy sector by prohibiting dubious climate lawsuits or actions that attempt to enforce an energy penalty law from being brought in either state or federal court. Comment on that, Aaron, if you'll jump in.
Absolutely. And, we're super appreciative of, Senator Cruz, Congresswoman Hageman, who introduced the House companion to this bill, for stepping up to defend American energy producers, consumers from these frivolous lawsuits and these ridiculous state programs. The legislation in a nutshell says this is not the right of the state to go out and create a patchwork of Climate Superfund laws to pad their budgets. And these frivolous lawsuits serve no purpose but to stop American energy producers. They rightfully recognize that the place for this conversation is not at 50 different state capitals. It's in the power within the federal government. And these states trying to grab this power violates that. And creating this retroactive liability is even beyond the pale of what a state's power should be. If you even look at it moving forward, it's not within the state's powers. This is a federal issue. And they're stepping in and clarifying, hey, this is a power strictly vested with the federal government. The federal government clearly does not think that this is the way to move forward. So we commend them for it. We're out there helping drive up support for this legislation and trying to provide the backing that we need to fight these off, both on the Hill, in the courts, and in the states.
Yeah, so Senator Cruz said, and one of the things that's important, I might be a long-time union iron worker, but one thing you'll find out that stereotypically everybody looks at labor like we're all Democrats, but you can ask any labor leader, man. We're not a political party. Okay, we support those who support us, and of course, labor and energy are kind of an oxymoron, right? So, literally speaking, we support those who support us. So, to me, this is not a Republican or Democratic or issue; it's a human issue. And at the end of the day, Cruz said radical environmental groups have waged a coordinated campaign to weaponize our judicial system against American energy producers, where our workers are working, including many in Texas. They're using meritless lawsuits to bankrupt our energy industry, kill good-paying jobs, and drive up the cost of electricity and gasoline for hardworking families. I'm proud to lead this bill to stop that abuse, to protect American jobs and lower energy costs and defend American energy dominance. And so the AFPM statement here and the API in backing that, the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers AFPM President and CEO Chet Thompson and the API President and CEO Mike Somers issued the following statement. We thank Senator Cruz and Rep. Hageman for introducing legislation to stop a growing patchwork of state laws and lawsuits that threaten American energy and risk raising costs for consumers. Okay, these efforts to retroactively penalize companies for lawfully meeting consumer demand are misguided and counterproductive. Obviously, Congress should act decisively to reaffirm federal authority over the national energy policy and end this activist-driven state overreach. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a movement that in my mind is a cash, it's a cash grab. Okay. And the stereotypical, the rich, energy industry is obviously the target. And so we have to really, really, really unite here to make sure that our people understand what this is. Let's what can people do about this? Okay, when you look at this new legislation, okay, you need to push back. Okay, what can workers do to make sure that our voices are heard and have some balls to get this thing, shut, get this movement shut down.
No, absolutely. This all comes down to being the squeaky wheel. Voice your concerns about this. This is going to impact every family, every job, every labor position at a refinery, on the field, anywhere that you see a facility. This is going to be hugely impactful. This should happen. Those jobs are not going to be there forever. They're going to look at where they're at and they're going to say, well, I guess the Northeast doesn't want fuel. It was great to be here while we were, but it's not going to remain profitable. It's not going to remain economical for our folks to continue operating facilities. They're going to have to make individual decisions by company how they move forward. And unfortunately, those impacts are going to be at the employee level first and foremost. And so employees from the labor side reaching out to their elected members, letting them know this is not something they support at the state level, at the federal level, and even up until the state AGs who are pursuing these, letting them know that this is not something that has their support and not something that the voting public should support. And that's part of the issue that we have to get out there and educate folks on, is how big of an impact this is. It sounds good on paper when you say we're going to penalize the major energy producers. It'll have no impact on you, have no impact on your fuel prices, and we'll use that money to build infrastructure. The logic flaws in all of that are clear and apparent. This will impact you. This will cost you. And it's definitely not going to be just tossed towards infrastructure.
Don, so I understand many of the state Superfund penalties considered in the past year have already received a lot of pushback. You touch on that?
Yeah, sure. New Jersey's our greatest example. We've got a coalition over there. Our coalition letter had more than 100 signatures on it, right? We had business groups, we had labor groups, we had local unions, local trades, state organizations, we had business groups, we had retail groups, we had fuel groups. Everybody was involved. They tried to push it, they tried to push it through at the end of session, and it went to Senate Finance, and they passed it, but they said, look, the only reason I'm voting for this is it's not going to go to the floor, and this is done, and we need to have big conversations about it. And in state after state, that's what we're seeing is leadership doesn't actually like these bills. That's where, the rank and file gets all excited. They get wound up, you get a bunch of co-sponsors, you do some press conferences, you make some noise. But in the end, it's either somebody in the Senate leadership or the House leadership or even the governor's office that is pushing back on this, is starting to understand, look, this isn't free money, right? This isn't growing on trees. This is going to have an impact on our state, or in a place like New Jersey that has refineries. It's going to have a significant impact on our state economy. And so that message is starting to sink through. We got to start every time a new bill gets introduced. We have to start at square one with that and build that up. We've been working in New Jersey on this for 3 years. Minnesota introduced a bill 2 months ago. So we're, starting that process in Minnesota. But that's where the pushback comes from. It's from a large coalition of groups.
Well, I think didn't the AFL-CIO in DC, didn't they jump on board here?
Yep. And the state AFL-CIO sent their own letter to New Jersey during that Senate Finance Committee hearing.
I mean, that's pretty big because, you have, when you talk about the AFL-CIO, a lot of people so you have your building trades, which is a part of the AFL-CIO, but the AFL-CIO has, every union is, under that umbrella. You have a lot of liberal unions, and some leadership that's good leadership, but sometimes can be liberal. So for them to jump on this, and that's a great thing. I mean, for them to understand and not buckle to the person that's screaming the loudest. Okay. I just, I'd like to be a fly on the wall at some of these law firms when as they understand that the cat is out of the bag, and people are starting to understand what this is all about. So, Don, obviously, we appreciate you with explaining what's going on at the state level. But Aaron, talk a little bit about the federal angle and addressing this issue. Talk a little bit about how this issue is being discussed federally. Is this even on Congress's radar?
Oh, absolutely. It's on Congress's radar. It's in the administration's radar. We saw the president come out and direct the DOJ to get involved in these lawsuits and push back and fight against them because they see that this is a threat. DOJ is taking a very active role. Congresswoman Hageman even had the Attorney General in front of her House Judiciary Committee and asked her specifically what the administration is doing, and they're out there fighting. And at the time that the AG was like, this is a directive from the president to make this a priority. Looking at Congress, we have members that are extremely interested in pushing back on this across the, from the east to the west, representing diverse districts, producers, consumers. They're pushing to have this legislation considered in front of committees. We're pushing to have hearings. Congress can easily step in and say, this is clearly an issue within the federal remit, not within the state's remit. And these lawsuits are frivolous and they go well beyond what an individual action should be for a global issue. Hugely important. And we're seeing that engagement from members of Congress, leadership, and rank and file House and Senate members who see this as for what it is, a cash grab.
Yeah, and it's interesting. By the way, today's Earth Day. Did anybody know that?
Oh, happy Earth Day.
Well, happy Earth Day. By the way, emissions on this planet have gone up substantially since the first one, okay, in 1970. And so, we were putting together a social media campaign. I did a little research, right? While America, our standards are going up with our traditional energy industry, okay? Countries that we cannot govern, okay, are through the roof, okay? Mm-hmm. Their standards, many, by the way, where there's no accountability, okay? And so, I posed the question, if America controlled all the standards of energy across the planet, okay, how much more improved would our emissions be? Okay, it's through the roof. Like, we are the industry leader, so I think it's a great idea to shut us the hell down and let people who are doing it much worse than us, let them take the ball. There is no big picture with these people. That's why emissions since the first Earth Day have multiplied, exponentially. Anyway.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at globally, like at China, India, Africa, economies that are still building old school plants without the same emissions technology as the United States. Exactly. And yet we still beat ourselves up over emissions when we've reduced them and have the best technology operating at the cleanest level and the safest to provide fuel for not just America, but for the world. It's crazy to wrap your head around, and it's exporting climate guilt in essence.
It is, it is just confusing. Let's get to the general public, okay? I said this at the beginning of the show, and it's a complicated issue, okay? I don't really think it is after I broke it down last night, but I can see why, members of the general public who are out there working their asses off for their families every day, and haven't had a chance to study this, and aren't talking about it in layman's terms at their dinner table, I can understand how it can be complicated. So, Aaron, what does the polling say? What does the public think about this? Have you guys done polling on this? Because it is a complicated issue. Talk about that.
No, absolutely. And it is you hit the nail on the head. It's a complicated issue. Awareness is the big challenge. And right now, folks aren't supremely aware of it. There's a lot going on. But with the recent, talking point that we hear about affordability and looking at global conflicts Iran and gas prices coming up, people are starting to focus in a little bit more. But we've done some recent polling here, and I'll toss some numbers at you, and you let me know what you think about this. Only 16% of Americans think these policies are a good way to address affordability and the cost of living. Only 16% think, yeah, climate superfunds are a great way to move this forward. 64% believe that these policies, the lawsuits, the climate superfund programs, will raise the price of energy and fuel for them. 64%. And 60% total believe these revenues are going to become a political slush fund for state legislatures to just backfill programs that they've been spending like crazy on, and are only doing this as a way to pad their budgets. If you look at that, clearly this is not a popular issue with Americans. The issue at hand here is making sure that they know about them, because the average American will think the exact same thing. But if they're told we're just going to magic us $80 billion and we're going to spend it to build a bridge, that sounds great. You're going to pay for it. Your fuel prices are going to go up. It's going to harm jobs. And maybe we'll spend some on some infrastructure. Maybe we'll spend somewhere else. That's the reality.
Yeah, well, you have, and I wonder if people just, if regular people who were out there, are not like the ones you poll, but if the majority of people really understood what was going on, how much higher those percentages would be of people that, just put me in a room with them. I mean, you guys are way too smart. I'm going to lay it out there just like, here's what's happening A, B, and C. Who would, and here's our consequences, right? It's just,
Absolutely.
People, as we learn, and that's what this program's for, and obviously what you guys are doing, you're fighting the fight on behalf of all of us, okay? And we don't even really know it or understand it until it's gone. And at the end of the day, getting engaged in the general public is incredibly important. Aaron. So obviously, this situation has serious implications for good manufacturing jobs, union and non-union, okay, and not just in the refining industry. How important is it that industry workers speak up, okay, if they're concerned, and how can they make their voices heard? We talked about it earlier. But, are they, since this is a statewide and a federal issue, what's the list of people they should get on the horn and start calling?
Absolutely. I mean, this could absolutely threaten our manufacturing capabilities and labor jobs. For Don and I, this is our top priority issue that we're handling here at AFPM. For the workers, for members of labor, this should be on their radar. Should be top of their radar, and they should be extremely concerned about this. So concerned, they should reach out to their state legislatures, their House and Senate for the state. They should reach out to their governor. They should reach out to their federal elected representatives of the House and Senate, and they should let them know. They should activate with their union. They should activate with their refinery. This is where the labor and energy really comes into this together. We're all aligned on this issue. This should be an all hands on deck exercise, because the consequences of not doing that are just so high for the employees, for our country, and for energy security.
We talked about the AFL-CIO being on board, and it doesn't seem like a business no-brainer. It is, okay? Where are we with our building trades and our individual unions? You talk about educating, and those guys are at the top of, they're out there fighting and procuring work for their members. Passionate, you got some really passionate unions that work in the refineries and in the energy sector. And I know that the AFL-CIO, which is a big deal. But where are we with individual unions in individual areas? Okay, in support here, and how can we make it better?
Yeah, just sort of getting the word out and letting people know more and more about this. Obviously, the locals in New Jersey, fantastic. I mean, they know it, they get it, they see it right there, right? But it's getting the word around, particularly throughout New England. And they understand it. They understand the need for energy. We've been working with them. I've been here at AFPM for 10 years. I've been doing labor outreach on the local level throughout New England for 10 years. Right? I've worked with everybody up there. They understand, they're still fighting for pipelines up there, and they're never going to give that fight up. Because it is good. It'll save them a ton of money up there.
And let's not forget permitting reform, to make all that stuff happen.
Yeah. No, we're really close to all the locals. We've reached out to them, throughout the process, and they've been fantastic.
Fantastic.
Our union friends and allies have just been the best in this entire fight that we've all been put in.
Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for being on the program. What I'm going to do for all your friends up in New England is get you some nice green jerseys, right? They got the wings right here. Whoever's not on board will be on board after that. Just a suggestion.
Sounds
Guys,
good.
I want to thank you, you both, for Don Thorne and Aaron Ringel, for being on the program, for what you guys are doing every day. We're going to hold our end of the bargain up to take this disgraceful situation and get the word out, because it is infuriating. And appreciate you being on the show, guys.
Our pleasure.
Yep. Thanks very much.
Awesome. We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show in just a minute.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
And back here on the Labor Show with J-Doc and Krause. Man, what a great two segments, J-Doc, with your guest. We have, if I look at the clock, we have about 90 seconds before we have to wrap up this edition of the Labor and Energy Show. Call it 2 minutes, but a lot of ground covered in that conversation. And as I listen to the program from behind the glass in more of a producer role instead of kind of a co-host role, boy, there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that I was not even aware of, and I do the Labor and Energy Show with you. So imagine the public listening and hearing this for the very first time.
Yeah, Joe, it's amazing. It's infuriating, and you have an environmental left and extreme situation partnered up with law firms that have a formula that want to go in and retroactively penalize our traditional energy industry. The people who own the plants, in the organizations for damages that they're that they're kind of putting together, okay, in a package, and providing the contingency fee agreement to townships and saying, listen, we're going to go after these big, deep-pocketed organizations who can afford it, okay, and everybody wins. We're going, you don't pay anything, the township or state doesn't pay anything, and they're going, and the law firms are going to get paid, and as far as they have total disrespect for industry and the general public to what they're really doing, and of course our jobs and our certainly the amount of loss in of jobs, and of course the surrounding communities, the tax base, so much loss, it's actually staggering. And if the AFPM and obviously our political leaders that know what's going on here, including the AFL-CIO, that hadn't jumped in, man, the devastating would be amazing. And by the way, it's still happening, Joe. So we got to just keep the bullhorn up, and let the public know what's going on, man.
This is one show, the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krause, that you may want to download and re-listen to as you get your steps in on a daily or nightly basis. Great show, great conversation today with the Labor Show, or the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krause. Glad you're with us. Special guest again, J-Doc. 30 seconds, J-Doc, and then I've got to say goodbye.
No, I want to thank Don Thorne and Aaron Ringel from the AFPM. I want to also thank Adrian Orsino and Erica Perryman and Rachel at the AFPM for putting this program together. Okay, and all of our members of our Labor and Energy Alliance who are we're all fighting a good fight, and so that our country can maintain its energy independence. Okay, and our energy resources. And so,
by the way, I got an early morning text from Brendan Williams today. He said, "Hey, why is J-Doc still working on this show at 3:30 in the morning? Tell that guy to get to bed."
I called him late last night. I'm like, this is nuts. But I also called Adrian today, this morning, first thing in the morning, and we had passionate conversations. But we've only just begun, Joe.
All right, good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with J-Doc and Krause. See you next time, everybody.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.